Hello and welcome to another video tutorial on how to use C++. Today we want to work more with classes and objects. For that I created a new project, number 12, Constructor Destructor, and added the main function right there with standard code. Okay, last time we created a class called Circle, and then we outsourced it into circle.h, which was the header file with the declarations in it, and also we created a circle.cpp with the implementations for that. Today we want to do the same thing for a rectangle, but also a little different. So for that, here now we use the menu function project, and in there you can select add class, and then in this new window we can choose this cpp file, cpp class, add, and then in this window we can just type in the name of the header and cpp file, which should be the same. So we just type in rectangle and then it automatically adds to the header and the CPP file. This should be enough. The other windows here we can discuss later. So this name here should be okay. Then end. Okay, and then we can see that the header rectangle.h and the CPP file rectangle.cpp have both been added. What we didn't have last time was a constructor and destructor, but this time Visual Studio already included it into here, so you can see it in this header file. The thing is, if we want to create an object in the main, this time the constructor will do it for us. So the constructor is used to initialize an object in a class, and in the main we can later just choose a name for a rectangle, let's say just like R1, and in that moment the constructor is being activated. So a constructor is a special method that has a name of the class but no return value, so not even void or something. Last time we didn't create a constructor, and in this case a standard constructor is being used, so it is not explicitly mentioned but it's still there, so we could still create an object. And what we have here is also a standard constructor, but we often want to adapt the constructor in a specific way, so we can change it. For example, for our rectangle later we want to have an own constructor that takes the length and width of it. Okay, so a constructor is there to initialize an object in a class, and the opposite of that is the destructor, which is to dissolve an object. And the call for destructor is made when the area of validity is left. So later in the main, when we are creating an object, and after we leave the area of validity, so this is the brackets that we have here, when this area is left, then the destructor is called and the object is being dissolved. Okay, let's save the file first and we go back to our header file. We can see here that there's the command hashkey pragma once, and because there's a hash key we can already know that it is a preprocessor directive, and this command assumes that the file we have here should only be included once when compiling. So in a case where we maybe want to include the .h header file multiple times, then the command here, pragma once, makes sure it's only included once. We can talk about this later when we're working with include guards. Let's go back to the class rectangle itself, so let's fill it with some functions and look at the constructor and destructor. Well, first we want to define two variables in the class, and set those to private. So let's say private, and then the first one is a double called MD length, and this one is a member variable. So M stands for member variable and D stands for the type double. Then the second one, for rectangle we need two obviously, MD width. This is also set to private. This means we only have access inside of the class and not in the main, but if we still want to edit our member variables from the main function, we have to use methods. These are called setter and getter. The method set is to assign a value to a variable, and the method get is to retrieve a value. So let's start with the setter. Because for this we don't need a return value, we just set void set length, and we do the same thing for the width, so void set width. And then of course we have to assign a value to the length and width, and because up here we use doubles, so therefore we have to use doubles here as well. So we can say double D length and a double D width. Okay, so these are the setters. We are done with that. We assigned values to our member variables. Next is the getter method. This does nothing else than just requesting the value. And the name getter already implies that we have to set a return value, and because our member variables are doubles, we have a double here too. Okay, double, and then we just set the names get length, and the second one is double get width. And we don't need to assign anything. Next we want to declare some general methods. So for example the area and the circumference. So we say double area and double circumference. Okay, and now we're basically done with our header file. We have everything that we need, and now I'm going to take the CPP file, rectangle CPP, and move it to the left side so that I get a shared window. Now we can just see it better because we created the class rectangle in the option menu. We now see that the header file already is included in this line. And also we can see that here this is the constructor and this one is the destructor. And as you remember, in the CPP file we have to define the functions that we want to have. And to do that, we first have to include our IO stream so that we can output something when the constructor is called. So we go to the constructor and say cout rectangle created end line, and you can see that the command cout is still underlined with red lines, so we have to include the standard namespace first. Okay, using namespace standard, and now you can see there are no red lines anymore. And we do a similar thing, basically the same for the destructor. Because the rectangle, the object is destroyed here, we just say rectangle destroyed. Okay. Now we just have to implement the setter and getter functions. So therefore we just set a comment first. We have the setter and getter methods here. And then first we define the function setLength. We can orientate ourselves with the help of the header file here. Okay, so we don't have a real return value, so just say void. And then we still need the name of the class with the scope operator, so rectangle, double colon. And then we can name the method setLength. Now the function gets a double d-length, and what it should do is that we just assign the value d-length to the member variable md-length. Okay, this one here gets the double. So just use this. And that's it for the length. The same we can do for width. So we just change the length functions to those width functions. Okay, so also then of course we have to assign the width. So md width is d width. Alright, that's it for setters. Now we move on to the getter functions. In here we just have to return a member variable. So in this case, of course, it's double again, double get length. And now we don't need a parameter to assign in here. We just have to return the value md length. And again, you can see that this one is underlined because we didn't set where it belongs to. So we have to set the class again with the scope operator. Okay, that's it for the length. Then just copy paste to set the getter function for the width and just change the names. Again, we return the width, and that's it. We're done with implementing the getter and setter functions. Next are the functions for area and circumference. So we again say double and then class rectangle and function name area. And this is pretty simple because we just return md width times md length, because this is the area of our rectangle. Okay, the same thing for circumference. So again we say double class rectangle and circumference, and in here we return md width plus md length, and this multiplied by 2. And that's it. Now our class rectangle has been created, and we can move on to the main function. So in our main function, we first include the header file. So we just say here hash key include rectangle.h, and then we want to create a rectangle. We name it R1. So we say rectangle R1. And then with the point operator, we can set the length. So R1 point set length to 10. So it has to be a double. This should be okay. Then we need the width. So R1 set width of 20. And next we can just have the output that says that we want to have the area of the rectangle. So R1 area, don't forget the brackets, end line, and also let's output the circumference. So R1 dot circumference end line. And now let's see if this works. Okay, let's run. And then we can see here first, when the object is created, the constructor has been started, and the output says that the rectangle has been created. Next, we have set the length and width, and then the output is that the area is 200 and the circumference is 60. And after that, we leave the main function and go to the destructor. The destructor is called and the rectangle is destroyed. And that's it. As I mentioned, sometimes it's necessary to modify the constructor. So this is what we want to do next. So that means we want to create our own constructor. The name should be the same, so the class, but we assign something. Okay, and what we want to assign is the length and width. So we say double D length and double D width. And then when we are creating a rectangle with a length and width, this is automatically assigned to the constructor. And for that we still have to modify our CPP file a bit. So we go here, and after the first constructor we just set the other one. In this case we say rectangle rectangle, and inside we can, for starters, just copy this line. And now, because we want to assign two doubles, the first value is the length, the second one is the width, we just put it inside of the brackets here. So double D length, double D width, don't forget the double, and of course there should be a comma. And then in this constructor we then assign the given parameters to the member variables. So what we say in here is md length equals d length and md width equals d width. Alright, save it and go back to the main. In the main function we now want to create another rectangle, just like the first one, but let's call it R2, rectangle R2, and because we have assigned the values, we can just now open the brackets and fill it with our length and width. And this time we choose, let's say, 10 and 30. Just put it in there. And now our object is being created with the width and length of 10 and 30. And let's just output this again. So copy the same commands here, but we of course have to change it to R2 and run it. So this method works as well. We don't have any errors. And let's see, in here, our first rectangle R1 is being created with this area and circumference. And then our second rectangle R2 is being created with area of 300 and circumference of 80. So, and then when we're leaving the main functions, both of the rectangles are being destroyed. Okay, so this is the end of this video. I hope you got an idea about constructors and destructors and how to set a member variable as private in the declaration, and also how to change member variables with the public methods of setter and getter. And also we implemented these little functions. Okay, so my recommendation is to try it out, and thank you for your attention.